You've heard and watched the podcast. Now come see FTR with Dax Harwood live at wrestling's biggest weekend of the year, Thursday, March 30th at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel, the home of WrestleCon, at 8 p.m. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com. Join Dax with a live mic and guests, of course, Cash, Powerhouse Hobbs, Wardlow, Sean Spears, and some surprises that we can't even talk about. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com now. Hello, wrestling friends. I'm Matt Kuhn, which means you're listening to Say Yeah! FTR with Dax Harwood on our first ever YouTube exclusive. You know, we're trying to hit the YouTube a little bit. And we're going to do it by doing our tag team March Madness. We're going to finish this bad boy up. We'll probably collate them all together in one big omnibus, the whole 64. But we want to get to the Sweet 16. What's it feel like to do a YouTube exclusive? Feels like we finally made it, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Especially if people tune in and want to hear us talk about this tag team tournament, see who the greatest tag team of all time is. We ran out of time last week. You know, you had some things going on. It was your birthday. I had some things going on as well. And we decided we wanted to catch up with the tag team tournament and give the fans, because I get a lot of messages about this tournament and how much people love it. And not even the concept of the tournament, but like the information and how in depth I go with each team and how much research I did on the teams to push them forward. So yeah, I just want to make sure we stay on top of it and give the fans what they want.
Well, it's educational, too. You know, as you're saying, it's a lot of people are like, I didn't know about this tag team, or even tag teams of the 80s I didn't know about. And now they're learning about it. Someone chimed in today, before we get started, about one of our matchups in our imaginary tag team tournament. And that person was Ricky by God Morton, was looking forward to one of our imaginary matchups in our imaginary tag team brackets. That's fucking weird. It's cool, right?
Yeah, it's real cool. I mean, he's quite possibly the greatest babyface of all time. Maybe definitely one of the greatest babyfaces I've ever seen. To understand when to fight back, how to go back down to selling. And he never cared about looking tough, and the fans never questioned him about being tough because his toughness was in the selling and never giving up. And I wish that a lot of other wrestlers would understand that and realize that, because he is legit a greatest of all time wrestler.
There's a wrestling writer who used to write on the internet named Scott Keith, and he used to use this term, playing Ricky Morton. You know, like if someone's playing Ricky Morton, and that goes to show that Ricky Morton didn't mind get beat up for 20 minutes and making Robert look good to make the other tag team look good. And that's what tag team wrestling is all about, right? Is that selflessness.
Right. And ultimately it was drawing money, and that's how they drew their money. It was Ricky getting beat up, Robert making the hot tag. And that was before the days of wrestlers working for a journalist to give him a 5-star rating. This was when they needed to work towards making money at the next house.
And we'll get to it. Want to talk real quick about our live show coming up this Thursday as we're recording, March 30th, Los Angeles, California, the live show. Y'all know all about it, but what you might not know is that you need to be there. It's going to be a party, March 30th at the Biltmore Hotel, Los Angeles, the home of WrestleCon. Wardlow, Sean Spears, Hobbs, although Hobbs and Wardlow will not be there at the same time. We do want to emphasize that. And of course, Cash Wheeler, some other special guests, lots of fun times, and most importantly, hanging out afterwards with the VIPs and drinking some tequila. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com. So, Dax, you ready to get started with this tag team Sweet 16?
Yeah, this is going to be the hardest one overall, but let's do it.
Hey, how'd your basketball team do in the NCAA?
Dude, you almost got to fuck off right there. The funny thing is they didn't even make it. How do you start off? Yeah. How do you start off the season as preseason number 1 ranked team, come in the first couple of weeks, number 1 ranked team, and don't even make the fucking tournament, dude? Oh my God. I don't remember. But however, this is the first time ever that no number 1 seeds are in that have gone on to the Elite 8. So that's pretty interesting for the NCAA tournament.
Well, it'll be better because UNC is one of the greatest college programs of all time for basketball. So I'm sure this will be a wake-up moment, and they will come back, and we're going to have some wake-up moments right now to it. Ricky Morton chimed in on this one. Rock and Roll Express versus the Young Bucks by the Dax Harwood criteria. Where do you see this match? Who moves on?
So I want to say this right out of the gate. Rock and Roll Express beat the Young Bucks. Because that's the clickbait thing, right? That's where they're going to take, and the journalists are going to say that I say that your Rock and Roll Express is greater than Young Bucks. So I'll say that right out of the gate.
I thank you. I thank you for downloads for that though too. So appreciate it. Yeah, that's
dude. So the past versus the present, and real quick, whenever we had the what we were building to FTR versus the Young Bucks, and we had the tag team appreciation night, and we brought in Arn and Tully side by side with myself and Cash, and on the other side we had Ricky and Robert with the Young Bucks. That was the dynamic, the past versus the past and the present, and the two teams that really influenced the modern two teams that we saw in front of us at the screen. And that's one of my most proud moments in wrestling, dude. I love that. Obviously, we modeled Cash and I modeled ourselves after Arn and Tully, and I would imagine that the Young Bucks modeled themselves. I'm sure they modeled themselves after the Hardys, the Hardys. But the Hardys modeled themselves after the Rock and Roll Express. The Rock and Roll Express, man. What else can you say about them? And I'll get there. I want to start with the Young Bucks first. A dynamic team, incredible team, one of the best teams I've ever seen in my entire life. They spawned a whole bunch of imitators after them, but those imitators couldn't do the style that the Young Bucks did. And that's a compliment to the Young Bucks. The only two men that could do that style and pull it off are Nick and Matt. And that says something too. And, and they also, I feel they were they were two of, and if not the two guys who brought independent wrestling back to prominence. They loaded it up on his back and they traveled the whole world like a territory wrestler would have done back in the day. And they made independent wrestling must see, and that's a big compliment to them. They also
they made wrestling cool again in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and they also they also helped start a whole new wrestling promotion, and the first wrestling promotion in 20 plus years that became a competition to Vince McMahon. So another notch in their belt they should be proud of. But on the other side of the ring, you got Rock and Roll Express. Probably the greatest babyface tag team of all time. I mean, off the top of my head, can you think of someone else? I can't think of anyone else.
No.
Greatest babyface tag team.
Because if you look at any Rock and Roll Express match and you have the sound on, good God, the whole match, there is screaming the whole match. There's a saying in music too, man, you want to draw the females in. If you draw the females in, you'll draw the males in. The males will go, the females go. That's why there's ladies' nights at bars, right? The Rock and Roll Express, all you hear is this high-pitched scream the whole damn match.
Yeah, and, but the thing that's so beautiful about both of them, I mean, Robert doesn't get the credit he deserves because he is an incredible talent. Always has been an incredible talent, but Ricky, man, he was the one who drew the emotion for those people because he sold, and he understood that, and he understood how important selling was. And, I said it earlier about him understanding and knowing when to fight back and how to fight back. If you watch Ricky, man, and I implore every young wrestler and old wrestler, myself included, please watch as much Ricky Morton as you can. Watch, even if it's just a singles match, Ricky Morton versus Nick Bockwinkel from Southeastern is so incredible. But you watch Ricky, man, people understand this. Like, if these are the two heads of the wrestlers, and if they're face to face, the people understand that they're on an even playing field. But when Ricky would start to slip and he'd start to sell and he'd start to, lower his demeanor, lower his body, people understood he was on the defense, And so when Ricky would fire back, he'd give one of those beautiful right hands, boom, but then he'd keep his stance wide and he would squat down and he'd stay low to let people know he still wasn't done fighting back and he still hadn't come back yet. And then he would come when the heel would come back to him, he'd give him one more punch, boom, and then he'd go back down to maybe a knee or something, but he kept fighting back instead of standing there, and I see a lot of, I don't want to say I see a lot of people do this, but I do, man. They stand there face to face with the heel opponent and they trade, boom, bam, boom, 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 boom. And I understand that people are going to think that's cool, but they're not going to feel for you as a baby face. And they're not going to feel for that heel either, who is kicking the shit out of the baby face and keeping him down. But yeah, Ricky is a national treasure in the wrestling business, and why he's not a coach somewhere blows my mind. So, in saying all that, the greatest tag team rivalry of all time was Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express. I wanted to, and I hope we still can, eventually do the same kind of business with the Young Bucks and create a new era, Rock and Roll versus Midnights. But yeah, Rock and Roll Express are going to have to move on in this one.
Ricky's still got his wrestling school, right? School of Morton?
Yep, Chucky, Tennessee.
So check that out, guys. If you want to be a wrestler, you want to learn from the best. The next bracket, the Rockers versus the Assassins.
Yep. So I think, a lot of the modern day fans, and even, fans from the 90s and early 2000s, they're going to say the Rockers, but that's only because there's so much more footage of the Rockers. If you do your research and you listen to people who have talked about the Assassins and how they changed the dynamic of tag team wrestling and the heat that they used to get, the Assassins, man, they I guess they entered or introduced a new mold of heel tag team wrestling. And they were also athletic, and they were also snappy with their punches and their kicks. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago, they have a match where it's two heels. It is Gino Hernandez and Tully Blanchard versus the Assassins. And the Assassins make those people in San Antonio love Tully and Gino.
Which is not an easy thing to do with those two fellas.
Yeah. So, as much as I love the Rockers, as much as I study their work, and respect what they've done for tag team wrestling, because, real quick about the Rockers, a lot of babyface tag teams now, and even heel tag teams too, think that chemistry and like continuity means hitting a whole bunch of tag moves, tagging it out, big, huge move, bam, 1-2 kick out, tag, another big, huge something, a drop to hold into a kick up, into a this and a that, and then a this, boom. That doesn't make you, that worked for one team. This is my opinion. That worked for one team. And that one team that did it that style was Motor City Machine Guns. They did it great. And they did it because they were two undersized guys who were incredibly talented and knew that they had to use their quickness to get over like that. And they never ever stood face to face with the heel and hit him back and forth and boom, boom, boom. They knew when to sell, but they also knew to keep these heels rocking. They had to do this, that, boom, bam, boom, and then they'd slow down, right? That's the beauty of the Motor City Machine Guns. I know we're talking about them, but with the Rockers, man, that's who babyface tag teams should watch to see what continuity actually is. And continuity is taking that wrist, tag, coming in, taking that wrist again, tag again, off the top, boom, taking that wrist again, snap marrying them down, tag, holding it down. The other guy hits the ropes and a big splash on the arm, boom. Is the continuity is just keep tagging. And that's what makes you look like, and the fans perceive you to be a great tag team. All that said about the Rockers, man, I'm going to have to push forward the Assassins.
A lot of debate online, and I even put a poll up, and a lot of people disagreed with the previous matchup of the Rockers going over the British Bulldogs. You stand by it, but also the Rockers go down to the Assassins.
I stand by it only because the Rockers were a team a much longer time than the Bulldogs were.
That is fair. That is fair. LOD versus the Usos. Man, there ain't no losers today, guys. There ain't no losers because someone's got to go home. In my mind, because I'm old, I got to go LOD. But then I remember, look at what these guys have done.
Right.
Not only that, by intents and purposes, these guys are headlining a night of WrestleMania.
Right.
I mean, what they've done the last year has been amazing.
Right. So I think the only at the end of the day, when the Young Bucks are done wrestling and they're finished with their careers, maybe then we'll say, okay, they surpassed rock and roll. Same thing with the Usos, man. They're going to go down as they'll go down as the greatest tag team in WWE history, period. In wrestling history, they'll definitely go down as one of the greatest tag teams of all time as well. And they've been teaming together since 2010, however, the impact that Legion of Doom had, the impact the Road Warriors had on wrestling, not just in America, not just for Crockett, but around the globe, dude. I mean, everywhere, in Japan too. It was, incredible. And we talk about, some of the copycats the Young Bucks had, and so, the Hardy Boys, another example, copycats. There was a ton of copycats after them. The Legion of Doom had way more copycats than anybody. And the thing is that their copycats also came on the competition's television. And the competition, which was WWF at the time, was supposed to be the superior brand. But they were copying with Demolition. They were copying the Legion of Doom's mold. And, you got to think about all that and think about how much money they drew as a team. Yes, I understand they probably didn't have the amount of great matches that the Usos have and will continue to have. But right now, in 2023, I got to say, I'm going to have to push the Legion of Doom through. Ask me in 10 years, dude, and I probably will have a different answer. Now, maybe ask me in 5 years, and I'll probably have a different answer. But right now, today, I'm going to push through Legion of Doom.
Arn and Tully versus the Fabulous Kangaroos, a tag team where you said last week had those gimmicks that you throw and they come back. and Conrad texted you about that, didn't he?
Yeah, the gimmick. What are those gimmicks called, dude? That's what happens when you get bumped around for 20 years. But now my family says it just because I've said it so much, and I lose like my train of thought, and I try to think of so many things at a time. I just say the word gimmick, and I
got to tell you, like Monday, I told a student just for hanging out with you. I said, "Go ahead and pick up that gimmick. Let's get started." It was a violin bow.
Yeah, but you forget what it's called.
You're right.
And you don't want to look stupid by saying, that thing. What is it? You just say gimmick, and it works for everything.
So this tag match.
Mm-hmm. Kangaroos and Arn and Tully. I don't know enough about the Kangaroos. You know what I'm saying? And I've done a ton of research, and I know how important they are to tag team wrestling. And they're the first real tag team. When they came over to America, it was called Australian tag rules or something like that.
They still use that term for many years, like a regular tag team match. Yeah, Australian tag team. Right.
Yep. And they popularized this whole gimmick match that we know now as a tag team match. However, this is my tournament, and I think that the influence, the money drawn, the matches they had, Arn and Tully, don't get too much better than that, man. You could put them at the top of the card, the main event, or they could open the card because Great American Bash 1988, excuse me. Great American Bash 1988, they opened up the card with Sting and Nikita Koloff. 20-minute Broadway, fucking barn burner of a match, right? But if you wanted to, just a few months prior at the Clash of the Champions 2, they wrestled Sting and Dusty Rhodes in the main event in Miami.
Right.
So you could put them at the top, or you put them at the top of the card or the opening match of the card. It didn't matter. And their frenetic pace, I've said it a million times, their frenetic pace trying to blow people up because they made whoever they worked with catch up to them. They never worked down. They only worked up and made the team they were working with work with them. They They put the baby faces in the middle, and they made the excitement around them. Arn and Tully, it could flip flop, but man, for my money, could go down as the greatest heel tag team of all time. So incredible. So I'm going to send through Arn and Tully, and I have to eliminate the Kangaroos as much as I don't want to.
And I think, as we've seen, characters are important. And the thing about Arn and Tully is that there was not one disingenuous or non-credible thing about them. When you saw their characters, everything was consistent. You believed everything you saw, probably more than anybody. So in my lifetime, you got to go Arn and Tully. Midnight Express against Edge and Christian. Dax is about to leave now.
I'm very close friends with Adam. I've said it a million times. I'm very close friends with the Jay as well. And that's a dream tag team match for me and Cash. However, I don't think that they would get upset with me for saying that Dennis and Bobby or Stan and Bobby or whoever are going to go through. The Midnight Express, specifically Dennis and Bobby, the Midnight Express are the reason we have the tag matches, the style of tag matches we have right now. Okay. They're the ones who created this fast-paced, high spot style kind of match. I mean, they did it logically, though. They did it by grabbing holds and then having the babyface come out of the holds and things like that. And they knew when to pick up the pace and slow it down. And more often than not, I think you could ask any of those wrestlers in that time period, nobody could follow the matches that Midnight Express and Fantastics, Midnight Express and Rock and Roll, or Midnight Express and PYT had, because they were so incredible. Yeah, man. Dennis, the quintessential badass heel. He knew when to get, he knew when to use his hand as power, like, put the brakes fucking on for a second. He knew when to be reeling on his heels and fall on his ass. But then when it was time, dude, when it was time for him to get his heat and kick ass, there was nobody better. Okay, because from what I hear and what I understand, he was a real badass in real life. But I've said it before. He used to do this little thing. It was just a backbreaker, right? Just a simple backbreaker. But he would pick the guy up pendulum style, right? Let the people see what's happening. He would execute it so beautifully, so perfectly, right on the knee, boom, keep him there for a second, and then shove him off like that guy was a piece of shit. Like he was a piece of garbage, just push him down. And that's a great heel, to hit a beautiful move like that, and then 1 second later, disregard him this way. You know what I'm saying? And let the people say, yeah, you didn't have to do that, dude. Subconsciously think that, you didn't have to do that. Their style of heat was unlike any other tag team at the time, because they're, and sometimes I see it, nowadays too, a lot of times. And when Cash and I were starting to make our way up in the ranks of tag team, I saw it too. Like the heels, and I guess the baby faces too, they would bypass the heat, because in their mind, the heat was just a boring segment, quote unquote, a boring segment of the match. The heat should be the most intriguing part of the match. The heat should be the most important part of the match, because that's the part of the match you want to get the people invested in your baby faces. So when we go to the false finishes, they care. They care to see a winner, And so watching Bobby and Dennis put together these elaborate hope spots to keep the baby face alive just enough to cut him back down, so the people think, okay, he's not finished yet. He's fighting for us. That's what the babyface is for, and that's what a great heel does. So all that said, Edge and Christian, incredible. If we broke it down and took Bobby, Dennis, and Stan and made them singles wrestlers, Edge and Christian would blow them out the water, right? But as a tag team, Edge and Christian, as a tag team, they defined an era. They really did, especially with the incredible matches they had. But they weren't a team for very long, and I just got to say, Midnights are going to go through.
Midnights go through, and they're going to be facing the winners of the Dudley Boys and Patterson and Stevens. Many people consider Patterson and Stevens the greatest tag team of all time.
Right. Yep. I wish there was a ton of more of footage. I've looked high and low for it, but I can't find it because I want to see for myself what they did, what they did to stand out, that so many years later, still the same men and same women are saying that tag team was the best tag team I've ever seen. Today, the same wrestlers from back then are saying, I've seen them all. That was the best tag team.
And they drew like a mother too.
Right. That's what I understand.
San Francisco, yeah.
Patterson and Stevens, especially, from what I understand, Stevens, man, in his prime, had a style unlike any other that a lot of people adopted right after. Patterson was an incredible seller, incredible visual seller, also had great fire too. But the Dudleys, obviously a team I've seen a lot more of, I've studied a lot more of, also can lay claim to having more championships than myself and Cash. I mean, they're the only tag team to hold ECW, WWF, fake WCW, but still.
You always got to say that. It's correct. Yeah,
WCW, IWGP tag team championships. They even went to All Japan and won the tag team tournament there in All Japan. They are an incredibly decorated tag team, TNA tag team champions as well. And everywhere they've gone, they've drawn money, and people love them. And they were at the Icons of Wrestling. They were side by side with us at the signing, and people still showed up in droves to see them. So in my opinion, at least in 2023, until I can finally see a little more footage, I'm going to have to go with Bubba and Devon. They're a team, like I said, during a dark time of tag team wrestling, they kept it alive for a very long time. And everywhere they went, they were on top of the tag team division. Like I said, ECW, WWE, TNA, New Japan, everywhere they went, they were on top and presented to be top guys as well. So I'm going to have to say the Dudley Boys here.
And I mean, it's a good thing that Patterson doesn't have a Twitter account like Bully Ray. So we don't have to hear about it if we don't put them through. Dudleys go through. Now we have one where Hardy Boys New Day. Okay. Yeah. That's, I guess for me, because the Hardys were always the same two guys and the New Day, as awesome as they are, all three of them individually amazing.
Yeah.
You might be thinking Hardys just because of the tag team act, maybe.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go with Hardys too. I love New Day. I love the guys, in the team. They also, we've talked about dark days of tag team wrestling. I don't know if it was any darker in the WWE than when the New Day was on top, and they're the ones who single-handedly, them and the Usos, they single-handedly kept tag team wrestling afloat.
And no one gave a shit, and they made people give a shit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And whatever they were given, they turned it to gold, and that is a characteristic of a talent that any boss would want.
As human beings, I don't think you get better in this bracket. If this was a human being bracket, the New Day comes out on top all the time, right?
Three better humans than the characters, and the characters are incredible. But like I said before, Hardys, so many imitators came after them, and I don't mean imitators like young bucks who studied them and used their style. I'm saying people wrestlers who would dress like them,
just aped them.
Try to do the swanton, bam, which in that, as well, they brought two new moves to life. The swanton from Jeff and the twist of fate from Matt, those moves I'd never seen, at least on national television before.
And your boy Wardlow does a Jeff Hardy swanton, period.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
And the reason is because he loves Jeff Hardy. So I think for what they've done for tag team wrestling for years and years and years, you think about it, even before WWE, they were in WWE and predominantly in WWE in 1998, towards the end of 98, on and off until just recently, 3 years ago, and even they came to AEW for a bit, and I'm hoping to see Jeff back one day and, ready to go with Matt. But yeah, the longevity of those guys, that's why I'm gonna have to push it through.
And you have to give them credit also. Hardy's through past the New Day, but you have to give them credit too for the ability to both forge credible singles careers too.
Yep, for
They
sure.
absolutely both did. So, okay, buddy, let's see where this one goes.
Mm-hmm.
Hart Foundation versus the Steiners. A lot of the arguments you make for tag teams, it's hard to fight against the Steiners in this situation.
Yeah, but also the Hart Foundation as well, dude. They teamed together from 1985 all the way to 1991.
That's a long time in tag team life.
Yeah, a very long time. And they teamed together in a time where wrestling was tag team rich. Just in the WWF, you had the Rockers, the Brainbusters for a period of time, the Rougeau brothers, obviously the Hart Foundation, the Bulldogs, the Killer Bees, Volkov and Iron Sheik, the Dream Team, all these Hall of Fame names. That's what Brett and Jim were up against, right? They also had an incredible act down pat. Brett, an underrated seller and one of the greatest sellers of all time. Jim, just what he is, a rhino, he was this big barrel-chested badass who would come in and he would just clean house. And it's
interesting with the Hart Foundation. Watching them as a kid, I didn't know they're both from Calgary and Neidhart's married to Brett's sister and all that. I didn't know all that. Right. I saw Mr. Fuji's guy tagging with this guy who was new and young, Bret Hart, and all of a sudden this shit just worked. It just clicked. Like, I don't know what it was with Jimmy Hart. I remember Jimmy Hart on TNT going, I have this new tag team with Bret the Hitman Hart. I was like, Hitman, that's new, and it clicked though. Like it's something about those two guys made magic together.
As baby faces and heels. They did it as baby faces and became a tag team champion as baby faces. They also did it as heels and were tag team champions as heels. But
Steiners, bro.
Yeah, it's the Steiners as a team did team longer than the Hart Foundation, just by a little bit, not too much. And they traveled the world too. They've worked in WWF, they worked in NWA and WCW and New Japan, and everywhere they went, every place they went, they became the tag team, the top tag team. Mm-hmm. Held many, many, many championships around the world. Classic matches, incredible matches, an incredible act as well. An act that was just two brothers that were amateur wrestlers. The people connected with them because they were brothers and they understood that family dynamic. But ultimately, they were just wrestlers and the people loved them.
And there was also the X factor of this young Scott Steiner who appeared to be the best wrestler in the entire planet.
Yeah.
With Rick Steiner, who is this guy who previously was with Kevin Sullivan, who is dangerous. There's a lot of different nuances going on in this tag team.
Yeah. So I guess surprise for me, I'm going to send the Steiners through. Wow. They beat the Hart Foundation only because their career lasted longer as a tag team. They did a lot more stuff. They traveled the globe and made money everywhere in every promotion. So, and then, also not to say Brett and Jim didn't, but if they didn't like something or they thought they were getting shit on, they stood up for themselves, and they stood up for it. And they was, okay, well, if you don't like it, then we can just leave. You know what I mean? And that was back in a time where if you stood up for yourself, people applauded you for it. Now you're a piece of shit.
And they didn't need to play the political game because they would just beat the shit out of you.
Right. Yeah.
Like go ahead and tell Scott Steiner to fuck off. See what happens.
Right.
Try it today. See what happens.
Yeah, I saw him at Icons of Wrestling, still looking like a badass.
Intimidating as shit. So we are now in our final 8. It's a little Crockett heavy. It's definitely 80s heavy. It's a little some recency bias in there, but it's our and your tag team brackets. So if you disagree, go ahead and tweet Conrad at hey, it's Conrad. So let's go ahead and do this now. We have the Rock and Roll Express versus the Assassins, the first match in our top 8, Elite 8.
Again, I've spoken, just about how much they mean to tag team wrestling, both teams, that is. I would love to hear what Ricky would think. Yeah, I would love to get his take on the Assassins, because I'm sure he watched them, as a younger kid, as a younger wrestler. He might have worked with him as well in Southeastern. I don't know. Him and Ken Lucas. Ricky always, and I've seen their matches, dude. Like, I've seen Gino Hernandez versus Ken Lucas and Ricky Morton. What incredible matches they had. Ken Lucas was an incredible babyface. Ricky says he's the greatest babyface he's ever seen, and that's where he learned all of his babyface mannerisms was from Ken Lucas. So they might have worked with the Assassins down in Southeastern. So I'd love to ask Ricky. Maybe I'll text him after this and see what he thinks of the Assassins.
But do the rock and rolls go through?
Rock and rolls go through. Yep, for sure.
All right. We've seen this match.
Oh, shit.
We've seen this match. I've seen this match. It's the LOD versus Arn Tully.
Mm-hmm.
LOD versus the Horsemen. Here we go again. Paul Ellering, J.J. Dillon. Who wins this match?
I mean, I love Arn Tully. Love Arn Tully.
Oh, boy.
That's my style of work. If you ask me, do you want to watch 100 matches of Arn Tully or 100 matches of LOD? I'm going to say Arn Tully. But going through, trying to be unbiased here, it's got to be the Road Warriors, right? I mean, again, they teamed way longer than Arn Tully did, drew way more money over a longer period of time than Arn Tully. Also, again, traveled the world in New Japan, All Japan, NWA, WWF, AWA, and won titles everywhere. The very first tag team in the history of wrestling to be the AWA World Tag Team Champions, WWF World Tag Team Champions, and NWA World Tag Team Champions. So speaking to that, it's got to be the Road Warriors.
And we're talking at a time where those were the three places to wrestle. Like AWA, yep. NWA, WWF were the three places to wrestle. You talk about their influence. LOD had all those copycats you mentioned before. But the idea of these big muscled up dudes storming the ring and beating people up, Brock Lesnar. I mean, just, for all those guys from Minnesota were also influenced by the Road Warriors. But, man, it sucks that Arn and Tully are out. But, man, I don't see how you can live with yourself as an honest person to say it's got to be right. LOD for the criteria you have.
For sure, dude. They're the reason tag team wrestling is still a draw now. They're one of the reasons. There's a few different ones, but they're one of the reasons. And also, when you think about it, any tag team with two big muscled up monsters, they always either get compared, for better or worse, they get compared to Road Warriors. Or whenever a booker is thinking, okay, I need two big Road Warrior tag. You know what I mean? Like two big Road Warriors for a tag. That's what they always go back to. Or two big guys that say, go watch the Road Warriors, how they demolished people, So yes, Road Warriors.
I mean, look at the impact Sting and Ultimate Warrior have had on the business.
Right.
And would they be in the business if not for the Road Warriors? Probably not.
Right.
So we have the Midnight Express versus the Dudley Boys. Mm-hmm. This is a great matchup. From what you said earlier, man, I think as much respect as you put on the names of the Dudleys, it's got to be the Midnights, right?
Absolutely. The quintessential heel tag team. They're the heel tag team that all heel tag teams should aspire to be. Dennis is the heel wrestler all heel wrestlers should aspire to be. I mean, I've said it before, Fit Finley, and I talked to Don Callis about this last week. Fit Finley, Tully Blanchard, and Dennis Condrey. In my opinion, the three best in-ring working heels of all time, because they could do anything and they could hit beautiful moves, and their punches were snug and their kicks were fucking flawless, dude. They were executed flawlessly. Their holds, there was no holes in their holds. They knew when to pick up the pace. They knew when to slow it down. People believed in them. Believed in them so much as badasses when they were chicken shit heels, or when they were chicken shits and they put the brakes on. They believed in them then too, because they knew they could come back and kick ass if they needed to. Right. I can't say enough good things about Dennis Condrey, and it almost pisses me off to think about how many young guys haven't gone back and watched Dennis, because, man, you could learn so much from him. I love the Dudleys. I think if this match and the two primes would have ever happened, it would have been incredible because Bobby and Dennis obviously would have bumped around for the Dudley boys, but the Dudley boys would have returned the favor to them because they have so much respect, I'm sure, for Bobby and Dennis. It would have been a great heel versus a great babyface tag team. But we got to send Midnights through, even if it's just for the feud, the almost decade-long feud with the Rock and Roll Express.
For sure. And for those of you who grew up when I did, you got to know the Midnights by watching them beat the utter shit out of these guys on Saturday night every week. You never really saw.
Yes.
They would just, and so that's how a lot of us see the greatness of the Midnights. The Midnights would storm the ring. Cornette would take the microphone away from Tony and David Crockett, and it was an amazing thing. And so if you want to see a Midnights match, go on Peacock if you dare, and just go to an old Saturday night. Go to the old ones. Go to the old ones and watch them beat the shit out of George South and Rocky King or whoever, or Joel Deaton or whoever happened to have the misfortune of getting beat up by Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton that week, and see the greatness of the manager of Jim Cornette.
But you know what? The greatest thing about those two, the greatest thing about Bobby and Dennis was if they were working with somebody the caliber of George South, who is an incredible wrestler, still today, an incredible wrestler. If they were working with somebody the caliber of George South, they would give him a little bit just to entertain the fans, but also show the fans, hey, this guy might have a little something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They
could make the Italian Stallions and Pez Whatleys of the world look like fucking world beaters sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, make themselves look like world beaters too.
Right.
I watch a lot of the dark matches in the back, and I see a lot of these wrestlers who are under contract with AEW, and these are get over matches for that wrestler, right? They're specifically for that wrestler to get his character or her character over, or get their moves over,
right,
and get who they are over, right? And then I watch it, and they have 5 minutes or 6 minutes, and in that 5 or 6 minutes or whatever the time is, they just try to have what they perceive to be a 5-star match in 5 minutes. And that does nothing for them as a character. That doesn't make the fans feel any certain way about them. It's two wrestlers who are 50-50, one who's under contract and been here for 3 or 4 years, and one we're just seeing this week. At this moment, you tell the person, hey, I'm sorry, this match is for me. I'm hoping one day you'll get a contract and I can return the favor to you, and your get over match will be with me. You know what I'm saying? But today, on this particular night, it's about me, and I got to make sure that I can get over.
It's a lost art. It's a lost intention.
Right.
And as a young fan, all I saw were squash matches, for the first 10 years of watching wrestling. Mm-hmm. And I love these wrestlers because I saw them as kick-ass guys. How much would we think of Nikita Koloff if Nikita Koloff wasn't fucking people up? Matthew and I once went through all the Saturday night matches just to watch Nikita beat people up. You know what I'm saying?
If Nikita tried to have this 5-star match in 1986 or 85, he would have stumbled his way through. You know what I'm saying? It would have looked shitty because he was learning on the job. But we had to make a killer. We had to make a killer so we could make money. I'm not saying we because my ass wasn't there. I was barely born.
But let's say it anyway.
Right, yeah. But we had to make this killer so we had somebody our babyface could work with and make money around the territory. That's a lost art in wrestling too. Let's go on to the next one, dude. Midnight Express go through against the Dudleys. I hate to see the Dudleys go, but love to watch them walk away.
Hardys versus the Steiners. I got nothing.
Yeah,
I got nothing, Dax Harwood. This one's all you. I got nothing.
Yeah, so I've earlier explained all the credentials of the Steiners and of the Hardy Boys, what they meant to tag team wrestling, what their career means to the profession of wrestling. You can't lose whoever you pick, right? But I'm going to tell you why I'm going to pick the Hardys. Okay, is again the longevity. And after their WWE careers, right, they went on to TNA and were successful there. They went on to work all around the country, and they were successful everywhere they went. They've drawn money every time they've gotten back together. They still are drawing money right now. They're still copycats of Matt and Jeff right now. And there's still people who work the style that Matt and Jeff kind of introduced to our profession, because they were a perfect mix of the Rockers and the Rock and Roll Express, because they had the athleticism of the Rockers and they had the adoration from the fans that the Rock and Roll Express had. I don't mean this as a slight at all, because I've told you how much I love Robert Gibson. I'm sorry, but Matt as the Robert Gibson, Jeff as the Ricky Morton.
Sure.
But they both also had incredible singles careers too. So that's why I'm going to send the Hardys through, and a legit dream match coming up next will be the Hardys and Midnights. And I don't know if I can talk about that one.
Well, we're down to our final four. Guys, we have, as you said, the Hardys and the Midnights, and we've got the Rock and Roll versus the LOD. Congratulations to the Hardys on getting a time machine and going back to 1986 Crockett for this four team Final Four. We will do that next week, or we will do that soon. Guys, thanks for listening to this YouTube exclusive of the Sweet 16. We got down to our Final Four online. Make sure to interact with us about this subject, and also make sure to go to our live show this Thursday, March 30th, Thursday night, 8 p.m., Millennium Biltmore Hotel, Los Angeles, California. You're going to want to say you were there. Guys, we'll see you next time on FTR with Dax Harwood. You've heard and watched the podcast. Now come see FTR with Dax Harwood live at wrestling's biggest weekend of the year, Thursday, March 30th at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel, the home of WrestleCon, at 8 p.m. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com. Join Dax with a live mic and guests, of course, Cash, Powerhouse Hobbs, Wardlow, Sean Spears, and some surprises that we can't even talk about. Get your tickets at FTRwithDax.com now.